Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. Let's see. Looks like everything should be going. All right. So, I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online when I'm not being interrupted by ads that should be muted. Anyway, if you would like to support this channel, if you'd like to get additional bonus content, you can go to my Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm up to on a regular basis, get preview pages of comics as I'm working on them, you can go to news.jeremy.net. That will take you to my newsletter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page where you can purchase physical copies of my comics, buy them on Amazon Kindle if you read digitally. They are also available on Comixology. If you go to comixology.jeremy.net, you can also read them there. So, I see Luber's on the channel in the chat. Thanks for showing up. How you doing, man? All right. So I haven't been working on comics for quite a while now, because I've been working on this Alice in Wonderland series. Kind of a dark, twisted. The whole backstory is that I had a nightmare about Pennywise from It. So I've been doing different versions of Alice in Wonderland characters as Pennywise. So actually, you know what? For those of you who haven't been in the chat or on the channel in a while, let me show you real quick. So we've got the Cheshire Cat. So I finished this one. I've got the White Rabbit was the first one I worked on, which oddly enough, a lot of bumps and grinds. Working through this one, but once I had this one done, it kind of set the color palette for the rest of them, and the rest of them have gone fairly smoothly after that. Then we've got the Mad Hatter, and so far I think out of the series, this one may have come out the best. And you know, it's just very simple and understated, but sometimes that's all you need. And now the last two pieces I'm working on are the Queen of Hearts. So I've got one version where she's here and she's actually holding the little Georgie's raincoat, the little brother from It, from the first movie. Well, he's in both movies, so to speak. And it's it's Queen of Hearts, she's taking a bite out of a heart. And then the last one, for some reason, I had two different versions I was debating on which to do. And I was either this or having kind of what I'm referring to as the Deadlights version, where she's got just the mouth open the way that the Pennywise will just open his jaws, and you see those dark hypnotic lights in there and just those rows and rows of teeth. And even though it doesn't look exactly like It, because it's just my own, going on my own version of it, I was trying to decide which of these two versions I wanted to do, and then I realized I'm making this series. I don't really have to serve any other masters. I can just do two versions of this particular character. So we're down to just me adding, I've finished most of the shadow work here. And so now I'm just sort of adding a little bit of a glowing rim light and finishing off the clouds in the sky and maybe adding some flowers in the background. And this one will be done. And so I figured, I don't know if I will finish it in this session, but if I do, I wanted to have a couple of comic book pages loaded up so I could jump back into doing some comic book work. So I'm going to get started on working on this. I'm working in Procreate on an iPad Pro. If you guys have any questions as we go, I will be happy to answer them. Sometimes I may get into a zone just drawing and focusing on what I'm working on. So if I don't answer your questions in the chat, I will try to get to them. If I happen to miss a question going through there, then please feel free to repost it, because sometimes I'm just drawing and talking and I get a little caught up and I don't necessarily, see everything. So the really nice thing about working on this series is that it has given me a chance to learn how to properly use Procreate, because I have had Procreate for many years, basically since it came out. I had it, hell, I was trying to use it on my first iPad, which before the Apple Pencil came out. And to be honest, the styli, I'm not sure what the plural of styluses are, but let's go with styli. But the styli that existed at the time, there were a couple of different companies that made them. And they were okay, but I really didn't feel like I had anywhere near the control that you have on a Cintiq. So I just kind of figured Procreate was a nice toy at the time, but it wasn't really something I was going to work into my major workflow. But they've come a long way since the Apple Pencil. Procreate and a lot of drawing programs on the iPad have become incredibly far more useful and functional. So I had an opportunity to get one, and I figured, let me try this out. And if it works, I don't know if I want to go completely 100% digital with my comics, because I really do enjoy inking traditionally. But what I might do is do all of my my layouts and thumbnails. That's actually what I'm going to do. Is I want to do this to get practice using it for doing color work. So I may end up using it for color work for comics, my layouts and thumbnails, and for doing my gray tones. And I will tell you though, just when I loaded in pages into Procreate to for starting on pencil layouts, I saw, you know what, it would be really, really tempting to just finish the whole page in this thing. So I'm very tempted by that. We'll see. It may come something where I fallen so in love with this particular tool that I can't help it, and I just end up going full digital. We'll see how it goes. I know a lot of people recommend it just in terms of the productivity. So I see comments in the chat. Let me jump over here real quick. So Luber says, I kind of wish you came earlier because I'm in the shower right now, so I can go to church. Because me, a godly person. It's like, how long do you spend on drawing each page? Well, first off, I'm sorry I caught you at a bad time, but that's what the replays are for. And you can always post. Here's another thing. If you miss a live stream, if anyone misses a live stream and you have questions for me, post them in the comments. I will either respond in the comments or I'll save those questions. I'll try to address them the next live stream. So what I've been doing for the past month or so, I'm trying out doing every other week I do a live stream. So 1 week it's a live stream, next week it's a time lapse. I have a bunch of time lapse videos that show the process of working on the previous issue of Morningstar that I haven't posted yet. So I'm going to do some narration for those. But yeah, you can always, even if you miss it, you can still get a little. I want you guys to be able to interact with me. That's the whole reason for me doing the live streams. I really enjoy, talking to you guys while I'm working. Even if I seem, kind of semi-crazy distracted while I'm doing it. But how long do I spend on drawing each comic page? Well, that's always a matter of how complex the page is. And I would say that I'm actually not that great at keeping track of the total time it takes me to finish a page, which I should be. And the reason why I'm not that great is because as a general average for a comic book artist, you should be able to do 1 page a day. So let's say an 8-hour work day. I mean, a lot of times it may take longer. Many comic creators are working 10, 12-hour days regularly, which is not great for your health. But it's one of those things where you balance, It's unfortunate that a lot of comic creators have to sacrifice their health in order to do something they love. So it's not great to do that, but it's an unfortunate reality in making comics. And mind you, I do not make comics full-time for a living. I have another day job, which is art-related. But the comics really are, this is another reason why it's hard for me to keep track of. I will say that I probably would guess I'm somewhere around 8 hours per page. And the reason why it's only a guesstimate is because when I talk about the page, I would say, the thing is, I tend to thumbnail out the entire issue before I start doing my actual layouts, which are me really breaking down the proper panels on a page and working out the anatomy and the storytelling. I mean, you work out the storytelling in your thumbnails, but then me actually saying, oh wait, does this character's expression, this pose fit this? Do I need to zoom in a little bit, out a little bit? Do I need to leave more room for word balloons? That's what my layout phase is. And they're basically, my layouts are basically what I would call rough pencils, because comic book penciling, since I started reading comics, has become much, much tighter. Because I was reading comics in the 90s as a kid. And in between the 90s to the early 2000s and beyond, with digital technology becoming good enough that you can print from some creators' pencils, whether you're working with an inker or not, comic book penciling has become incredibly tight and precise. So I really consider my finished art my inks, because my pencils, in my personal opinion, other people have told me otherwise, and I appreciate the kind words, but I really feel like what my layouts are definitely a lot rougher than what I see as finished mainstream pencils. But I'm digressing. I do all of my my thumbnails for an entire issue first, so I can work out any storytelling problems. Then I do all of my layouts for the entire issue at one time, which is me doing those rough pencils that I told you. And then I go through and instead of doing finished pencils, I go from rough layouts straight to inks, because I'm inking my own work. For each of those phases, I've had days where I've inked a page in like three hours. Sometimes I've had times where I've inked a page and that page has taken me like 8 to 10 hours. But I would say on average, I'm probably like 4 hours of inking. Then I would say with pencils, it's probably the rough layouts. That can be anywhere from, again, 2 to 4 hours. So let's say 6 hours of that, plus if you include the time for doing the thumbnails. Some pages, see, that's the thing. It's so hard to say. If I were to just average, it really would be probably about 8 or 9 hours a page. And let's say maybe an hour to thumbnail a page, maybe 2 if it's a particularly difficult page. No, because I've actually had pages that I spent many days. So let's say like 4 hours thumbnailing. Just because I had to, just balancing a lot of plates, balancing out a lot of characters, balancing out the dialogue, trying to get everything to work out properly, can be real challenging. But let's say that I spend 1 to 2 hours thumbnailing, and then I spend 3 to 4 hours penciling and 3 to 4 hours inking. So on a good day, that means I can probably finish a page in about 6 to 7 hours. On a bad day, it can be more like, and I don't want to say bad, it's just on a more challenging day, a more challenging page, or sometimes it's not even that the page is difficult, I'm just not, it's not popping, I'm not doing a good job, that happens. So let's say that, God, I can't believe it took me so long to answer this question. You asked, how long do I spend on a page? On average, 6 to 10 hours per page. That is the closest I can give you to an average, without me actually sitting and measuring how long it takes me to thumbnail each page, and then giving an average of all of that. How long it takes me to thumbnail each, how long it takes me to lay out each one, and then give me the average for all that, and then how long it takes me to ink, and then averaging all of that. And to be honest, I really should be measuring those things, because it behooves me to have a really good, accurate understanding of how long I'm putting into each issue, because somewhere I'm underestimating what I'm doing, because where I thought that I could maybe finish 1 to 2 issues a year, sometimes I only finish 1 issue a year. This year I'm taking longer on these comics than I ever have, but part of that is, like, for instance, I thought I was just going to spend a couple weeks doing these these Alice in Wonderland pieces, and then this has turned into something where I'm spent like 2.5 months, maybe 3 months working on them. But I also felt like I've been working on Morningstar for so long, I genuinely needed a break. I needed to do something else and change it. Now, I see more comments, and I spent so long on that one. Let me run back and hit up some other comments in here. So Ion Rocks says, I hated inking. I still do. He said late 80s for me in terms of the period when he started reading. You know what? If I be fair, I was kind of cheating on my age a little bit. I can remember that I started reading comics seriously, like going to my local comic shop in 1989. And I remember it was because I had started reading John Byrne's run on West Coast Avengers. Which, you know, most people when they say, "Oh yeah, I discovered John Byrne during his X-Men run," or they discovered it on his Fantastic Four run, all great works. That's usually where people are picked up on John Byrne. But for me, it was West Coast Avengers, and it's probably why Hawkeye is my favorite Avenger. But reading that book sucked me in, and then the newsstand where I was buying it from. You know, once I started missing issues, and then other friends of mine at school said, "Hey, you know, there's a shop where they've got like back issues if you miss any," and that was it. Comics just it was like the Cenobites in Hellraiser. Like they just put the hooks in me, and it was all over. But in terms of the comment about hating inking, well, you know, that's why there are inkers. There are people whose professional job it is to embellish the work of other creators. Means your pencil's got to be tight. Means when I say tight, I just mean you have to very clearly explain. You have to very clearly be able to explain on the page where your light source is, describing your volumes, being able to clearly communicate to your inker what you want from them. And I think that for me, I'm still learning as a penciler. That's kind of the reason why. It's not necessarily, I think I could definitely learn a lot by seeing my work inked by a better inker, but I feel like I don't necessarily, one, I don't have the budget to hire an inker, but two, I feel like I'm learning more by inking myself about what I should and shouldn't put into the page. And I feel like if I were going to collaborate with someone else, I want to give them all of the tools to make it a fruitful collaboration. And part of that means I still need to learn how to express myself better on the page, to get better at describing volumes, describing my light sources, making the storytelling clear. I'm still working on those things myself, and I don't know if I can necessarily provide the level of clarity that would make it. I don't want to frustrate an inker if I were working with an inker. I want it to be. I would want, like if I were working with any collaborator, whether it's an inker, a colorist, a letterer, I would want to be able to deliver my end of the work well enough that they would be excited to jump on that page. You see that page like, oh, this is cool. I can't wait to work. I can't wait to letter this. I can't wait to put list some colors on this. I can't wait to ink it. And I hold myself to a pretty high standard, and I don't feel like I've reached the bar yet. I haven't reached that bar. So that's why I share the work that I'm putting in with you guys. Because I think, you know, we all see artists that are amazing. For instance, right here, I see Guilherme Alexandre is in the chat. He says, greetings from Brazil. Do you know an artist, Brazilian Mike Deodato Jr.? Thanks for your tutorials. They helped me a lot. First off, you're very, very welcome. I'm glad you get use out of this and out of the work that I share online. Mike Deodato, yes, I love his work. I think he's fantastic. He's amazing. He's worked on so many different great projects. I mean, most of the stuff I've seen is like his stuff at Marvel, doing stuff on Punisher, doing stuff Wolverine. He's worked on so many different series over the years. But he's a guy, like, I look at his level of work, and that's the kind of work I aspire to. And I'm nowhere near that level yet. But I think that's the other thing, is a lot of times we see guys like that who their work is just brilliant and amazing. And I don't think what we see so much is somebody who is what I would consider a journeyman, which is what I consider myself. Somebody who, I like to joke that I draw just good enough that it would be a shame for me to give up, and not one bit better. So it's like, I can draw, I can tell stories, but it's still like, I still acknowledge that I have quite a bit to learn and quite a bit to do in terms of improving and making comics and getting to the level where I'm at. I'm not at a Mike Diodato Jr. level yet, and I've still got a long way to go to get there. But I think that for me, if anything, what I hope people get the most out of what I share is that we don't get to see someone doing the mileage to get to that level. I'm not at that level yet, but I'm putting in the work. And what I try to share is this is me every day getting in and with lifting weights, doing the bench press, doing the curls, doing the squats. This is me just coming in and trying to do the work it takes to bring my craft up to a higher level. So, but again, I'm really glad that you enjoy the channel and you're enjoying what I'm sharing. So let's see here. Also, on the in the chat, I see Ian Rock says, for me it was Marvel's New Universe, in particular Starbrand. Oh yeah, you know what? I remember when the New Universe came out, they had Starbrand, they had something called DP7, they had a couple of different series. Now, wait, when are you talking about just that's what got you deeply into comics, or did John Byrne work on Starbrand? Because it's been so long since those came out that I don't remember if Byrne was the artist on those. Let's see here. And Luber says, unfortunately, there's no comic shops in my country of Jamaica, so I either have to pirate them or save some money online comics. See Jimmy King's in the chat. He says, what's good, brother and people? It's like, what's good, man? I'm glad you're here. Glad you showed up. You know, it's funny. I don't know how someone internationally would get access to it, but in the United States, there's a service called Hoopla. And what it is it's like iTunes for the library. You can check out a certain number of titles as long as you have a valid library card. Now, I don't know if there's an international version of that or if there's a way to to apply for a library card that would allow you to access to that service. Because right now it's a service that's only in the United States. But I'm wondering if there is some sort of, first off, if there's a question of whether you've even got a public library near you. And then secondly, even if you can't sign up for a card, do they have digital assets that you can download from them? It would require some research to look into. But what I have found is that for these particular services, you know what? I keep trying to draw these highlights on this cheek, and I'm not happy with how they're coming out. Let me just undo this. This is one of the challenges also of talking while I'm drawing, is sometimes I'm trying to do something that's challenging, and I realize I'm just messing it up. I'm just sitting here going blah, 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 and I'm not really laying down anything of substance. But let's see here. It's worth looking into, just seeing if there is if there is a public library that you can get a library card from in Jamaica, and then if there's some service that provides digital assets that you can get to, because I know that not everything that Marvel and DC put out ends up on the service, but I know on Hoopla they've got like that. If you guys know Stefan Sejic, the artist who worked on, he does Sunstone, which is kind of a romantic comedy drama that's got a little BDSM in it. He did a run on Aquaman. He's done a lot of great comedies. He did a lot of stuff for Top Cow, Aphrodite 9, Bravin. He also had another series that he wrote and drew called Death Vigil that's on there. There's a series he recently did called Harleen, which is a Harley Quinn story. And that thing, I think it came out this past year, and I noticed that just popped up, like Hoopla sent me a thing saying, hey, you like this guy, here's a new series by him. So I can go on there and read that, and the library pays out the publisher, so they get paid for it. Kind of like with Amazon Kindle, how they've got Kindle Unlimited, and people get paid out depending on reads. I presume it works like that. But anyway, it's worth looking into. It's worth looking at research. Hopefully there are additional digital assets that you can read comics without breaking the bank, since you can't get to a comic shop. Ian Rocks also says on the Starbrand thing that he thinks it was John Romita Jr., and I will tell you that sounds correct to me. So that's the thing. I actually remember the Starbrand books coming out, but I didn't actually pick up any of them at the time. For some reason, it looked cool, but I was very limited in terms of what I was digging into at that time, at that age. Like, I think I was still reading a lot of. Honestly, I was just dipping my toe into superhero comics. I'd gotten into comics reading, like I think most kids from the 80s, you get into it reading G.I. Joe and Transformers. Just the fact that there was a cartoon that they made comic books out of was kind of mind blowing, and that was my gateway drug. My other gateway drug, I was reading. What is it? Oh, it's really funny. My parents, I can't remember if they took me to. They didn't take me to the theaters. They rented David Lynch's Dune when it came out on DVD. And I remember loving that movie, and it was like a long movie, so it was one of those where it was a DVD that comes with two cassettes, and I watched that a gang of times. I think I watched it over more than once, and then I think I got my parents to rent it again another time. So I really loved that, and then whenever they played it on TV, I was always watching it. So my mom, I guess she saw a comic book adaptation of Dune, and she's like, "Well, he seems to like the movie. I guess I'll pick that up for him." And that comic book adaptation was drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz, who has been one of my biggest influences. I think it doesn't necessarily show in my work now because I've learned that a lot of I very much got into when I was in high school into painted comics. Sienkiewicz being at the top of the list with Electra Assassin, and I don't think I got into Found Straight Toasters until I was in college. But any of Marvel's special work that he did, I very much love both his painted stuff and his penciling. But there were also, as I got older, there were other guys when I was in college, like David Mack and Ashley Wood. Those guys also I consider pretty significant influences. The reason why I don't think that necessarily shows in my current work is because I realized at a certain point that in order to do it wasn't just about being painted, but they were very expressionistic. They could exaggerate and distort the figure, but they exaggerated and distorted it in ways that enhanced the story. It wasn't a distraction. It wasn't just being stylized for stylization's sake. It really did enhance the storytelling. And I think the thing that I realized probably while I was working on my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, was that in order to produce work that has that level of expressionism and dynamics, you really have to have a really strong grasp on the fundamentals, on just basic figure drawing. And since then, that was a point, I was probably already in my 30s or in my late 20s when I realized that I'd been drawing for most of my life and I didn't really know how to draw. And that's a very humbling thing to realize. But it's better to realize that and start responding and reacting to it than to just go on deluding yourself. And so what changed for me was I really had to decide, okay, if I don't really know how to draw, what are the fundamentals I need to work on? It's when I start getting serious about figure drawing, composition, basic storytelling. So yes, this particular piece is very exaggerated and distorted, but other than that, I think in my personal work, I have moved away from that painterly, exaggerated look and just tried to find ways to get down to, trying to think of the best way to describe it, just fundamentals, figure fundamentals. That's what I've really tried to get close to. Let me see here. I think the reason why this shadow that I'm trying to put, these highlights I'm trying to put in again, the reason why they're not working is because I'm just trying to put yellow or orange in as highlight in the cheeks, like there's a glow that's spilling over from the mouth. And I realized the problem is instead of just putting the color over there, what I really need to do is look at this local color and warm it up. So if it's kind of a pale blue, then I guess warming it up might be something kind of a greenish tone. This might be horrible. Yeah, that's what you do. You try stuff and sometimes it works, Sometimes you try it, you're like, ooh. I really kind of thought it would get, you know what? Yeah, that green's not going to work. Let's keep it within the same color family I'm trying to do. In fact, maybe what I need to do is block it in solidly and then come in and erase out. So let's see what happens if I treat this like just a very bright, solid highlight. And then just come in and airbrush it out. As a matter of fact, let's just full opacity. Sometimes when I am trying something and it's not working, I just have to look at it and say, all right, what's an unconventional way to solve this? Let's see here. So I see Comic Art Chris, and he says, curious, why are you obsessed with drawing Pennywise? Well, see, here's the funny thing. I don't really think I'm obsessed with drawing Pennywise. It's just that I take too long to finish a project. The story behind this series is that I had a nightmare several months back after I'd seen It Chapter 2. And it was just a freaky-ass dream. And then when I woke up from the dream, I saw my cat kind of just sleeping on me. And I look over and I saw my cat. My cat just sort of turned its head, looked at me, and just sort of like, meow, just acknowledged the fact that I was awake. But in my weird fog of just having a dream, I imagined my cat, one of our cats, having the head of Pennywise. And it just really freaked me out. And then, as opposed to like having one of those weird freaky dreams where you're like, wow, this freaked me out, now I can't go back to sleep, my creative mind kind of took over and said, what if I were to, you know what? I don't know if that's working. I said, what if I were to do Pennywise as the Cheshire Cat, because, my cat's sitting on my chest. And I thought, oh, that'll look pretty cool. So I thought maybe I'll just do a piece. I just wanted to make an illustration, a standalone illustration. But then I thought about it and I thought, but what if I were to do some other characters from Alice in Wonderland? And I thought, well, the White Rabbit, the Queen of Hearts, and then I figured, oh, well, I might as well do the Mad Hatter to round it out. So it's less about me being obsessed with Pennywise than I just came up with an idea for an interesting series. I thought it'd be a nice break from working on my comic book, because I've been working on this series since like 2010 or 11. So it's been like, almost a decade I've been drawing Morningstar. And yes, I'm on the final chapter, but I just wanted to take a break and do something different with it. And I've been sharing the process of doing that series. And so as opposed to it just being me doing one piece and being done with it, it's taken me, a couple months to draw all of these Pennywise pieces. So, yeah, once I'm done with this, I don't see myself going back and doing more Pennywise stuff. And I can definitely see how it looks like I'm obsessed with Pennywise. It's really more, I wanted a break from what I was working on. It was an interesting idea. And sometimes you get that sense of immediacy. I don't know if it's like this for you, but there are times when I get an idea and I'm like, okay, well, let me just put this in my notebook and I'll come back to it later. Or, I like this, let me do a thumbnail sketch, and then I'll get around to it when I get around to it. And then there's times when an idea hits me like a bolt of lightning and I just feel like I must make this now. Like I'm just a little bit obsessed with it. And I think the intensity of wanting to do this piece, it just hit me at a time where I was like, I don't want to wait until I finish the last issue of my current comic book project, because that would still be several months away. I just wanted to jump on the immediacy of this idea. So yeah, When this is done, that'll probably be the last that you see of Pennywise for a while, but I won't make any promises because, inspiration is a funny thing. Who knows, I might get inspired to do something else with Pennywise, but for now, yeah, this series is going to be this piece is going to be the last of this Pennywise series. So, I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm still not happy with this orange light on the cheeks. I was gonna try and do kind of the same thing up here on the brow, but honestly, the more I look at it, the more I feel like maybe I should just forget that altogether. Maybe it doesn't need an orange glow on the cheeks. Maybe it just works better keeping this side completely cool and not. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of highlight on the nose there, but I feel like this is working better like that. Although I still want to put a little bit of a glow just around the outside of the mouth, just like lights kind of spilling out. And let's see. Um, Comic Art Chris said interesting. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Iron Rock says, by the way, I dropped the Awakened Human theme. It's a project he was working on. It ended up being really boring with him and way too overwhelming. Well, sometimes we start down a road, begin a project, and then, it ends up not going anywhere. You save all those sketches. You may come back to it in a couple of years and have a different interpretation you want to do, and it may spark something and really ring true where it didn't before. That's cool. And if it turns out it's just not something you want to do, hell, that in the end you're your own first audience, so you got to make work that you're interested in. I mean, unless someone's paying you to make it, and even then, ideally, you still want the work you're being paid to make to be somewhat compelling to you. But if you're just doing personal art, personal work, why not just focus on what makes you happy? Because I find that's the first step for me in making anything is what do I enjoy making? And when you look at the fact that in making art, and especially in making comics, you can spend many, many years with a project, it's going to be hard to have the steam to carry on and stay with something for years if it's not something that you genuinely enjoy, if it's not something you're passionate about. So, it's good that if you discovered that you don't enjoy that or you're not as interested as you thought you were, it's good that you figured that out. Go find something you do enjoy. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a story. You could just do a series of images. You could do a silent story. You can just do standalone images that are on a theme that interests you. I mean, these Pennywise pieces, they don't tell a story per se, but they do. I'd like to think that with most of the stuff that I draw, that I work in a sense of narrative into each piece. So, let's see. Iron Rock says he already erased all the voice memos on the subject. He said One Punch Man is already a thing. Yeah, but you have to remember this. A lot of times people say, well, I can't do this project because someone else did it. While, did the fact that One Punch Man already exists stop Luther, the team that created Luther Strode from creating that? I mean, it's the same concept, even if the execution is a little bit different. And going back even further, Fist of the North Star. Fist of the North Star was around before all of those. You look at The Walking Dead. It's not like Robert Kirkman did the first zombie comic. He just did a really good zombie comic. So, and again, I'm not saying this to try and talk you back into the project. What I'm saying is, it's good that you decided to set that project aside if you weren't into it. I would encourage you to still hold on to the sketches in case you may someday figure out, you may crack the code on how to do that story in a way that you wanted. For instance, Morningstar was very, very different when I first came up with the idea. I originally came up with the idea when I was in college, and it was very, very different. I mean, it all took place in hell, and it was, well, no, actually, no, the original story was just kind of what the climax is. We were just a gunfight between Lucifer and his band, and Michael and his band. They were just basically throwing him out of heaven because he was running a saloon. That ended up becoming an 8-issue series that took multiple years to tell. But that's just how the idea developed for me. Point being is that ideas change over time, and it's okay to set stuff aside, and then maybe you come back to you may discover a different take on it later on that's more fulfilling and more engaging. And if you don't, you don't. But never let the fact that someone else has already done it. Oh, okay. He says, I know, I'm just taking a break. But what I was going to say is, I don't think that just because someone else has already done a version of an idea is necessarily a reason to bail on that if it is something you're passionate about. I mean, what I would say is, can you find something about a project that is a different take on it? Is there a way to do something that, different angle, different direction, different twist on it than what's already been done? I mean, that's just as an overall, in general for creativity. Iron Rock says, I came up with a different theme, but ended up erasing that too. 206 voice memos. Well, you know what? If they're gone, they're gone. Maybe you'll come back to it. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll find a different take on it. Maybe you won't. It's okay. The universe will tell you what work it wants you to create. So now really what I'm just doing is I'm just kind of working the outside of the figure and just adding light to him. Or her, or it. Literally it. I often get overambitious in terms of how much work I think I'm going to get done in a given session. Because even with this, I was saying, oh, well, I'm almost done with the piece. Maybe I should have some comic book pages ready to go in case I wrap it up. The fact that I'm still just sort of working around the subtle lights around the figure, I still have to go back in and paint the sky, add in flowers. So it'll take a while. Iron Rock says, I might have mentioned it before, but I feel like I'm being shut down creatively. Well, that happens to all of us. And there's two responses, and both are valid. Response one is give yourself some breathing space, take some time, which you're doing. You said you're just stepping back from that idea. Just saying, all right, well, let me just relax, and when it's ready, it's ready. The other idea is powering through. Some people are just like, you know what, you're going to hit resistance, and you just have to buckle down and fight it and fight through it. And I think that it is very bad to say that one way or the other is the right way for creatives. The decision on whether to power through on something or to give yourself some space to rest and think is a very, very personal decision. No one can make that decision for you. Because giving yourself space, both on a project or just taking pressure off of yourself and not forcing something, I look at that as a form of self-care. And It's a bit of a buzzword these days, but when you look at how many artists deal with health issues, deal with emotional issues, financial stress, have a lot of problems they have to work through that we have to work through. I am among them. I'm not separate from this. Um, Artists historically are not great at taking care of themselves, making sure that they're emotionally, you know, healthy, that they're financially healthy, that they're creatively healthy. And I think that hearing other people in other fields talking about self care has made me realize how much I need to, for instance, just the whole thing of doing this series, even though I'm down to like the last issue of a comic book I've been working for years on, doing this series is a form of self care. It's a form of me giving myself the space to just say, you know what? I need some rest. I need some play. I don't need a break from making art, but I need a break from that project. Doesn't mean that I still don't love that project. I'm not extremely passionate about it, but I just, I needed to give myself some space to have some fun and do something a little different. That said, I think that if I personally had decided, no, I'm not going to do this Alice in Wonderland Pennywise series. I am going to power on. I'm at the finish line of my series. I'm going to push through and do it. I think that would have been an equally valid choice. Some people would say it's a more valid choice, and I probably should finish it before doing any other side projects. But again, self care. The idea of making a personal choice to do something that's gratifying. And when I think about this idea of personal gratification, I think a lot of it comes from realizing at a certain degree, because I mentioned this is not my full-time job. I've got a creative day job, but in the end, I really only get maybe one, if I'm lucky, 2 hours a day to make art. Now, if I were making comics and artwork full time, then I think that I do take my responsibility to my audience seriously in the sense of wanting to finish this project. And I do want to finish it in a time, not this project, but Morningstar. I want to finish it in a timely manner, and really to finish all of the ideas I have in a timely manner. But if I am not making my full-time living from the artwork that I'm making, if it's not a significant source of my income, then in the end, it's got to be personally gratifying. I have to make this because it's what I want to make and because it's what I enjoy. So, not that I don't care about what the audience wants, but the first person I'm making this stuff for, the first person I'm making this series for, the first person I'm making Morningstar for is me. So I realized that it's okay to be a little bit selfish, to say I want to spend some time making a little personal art project on the side. I mean, all of them are personal art projects, but I want to spend a little bit of time doing this series of pieces I'm going to make prints out of. That's okay. It's okay to be a little bit selfish as an artist as a form of self-care. So, and some people, it's up for debate. Some people are like, it's all about the audience and how they connect to it, and I'll give everything to please my readers or my audience. I feel like it's my own personal view, but I also think it's up for debate and discussion. So, if other people have other opinions, please feel free to voice them. And that's the thing. Even though I'm making this for me, I also know that art isn't made in a void. I feel like it's only the piece is only half created when I finish drawing it or painting it or writing it or telling the story. The other half is when people read it and engage in it, because everyone brings their own personal experience to how they read and interpret content. So, it's not made in a vacuum. The other half of it is how you engage in the things that I make. So it's a back and forth. It's a conversation. Let's see, where are we time wise? All right. Been going for a little over 45 minutes. All right, we shall continue on. At about an hour, I'll start winding down and finishing, checking to see if there's any last minute questions in the chat. Trying to work out sort of a subtle, I want this transition from the rim light that I'm putting around the character to be subtler than I'm currently drawing it. So I'm trying to move this a little bit brighter. Another thing that I've been doing since I started working on the iPad is I started thinking of light and shadow differently. And even though it's still light or the absence of light, I started naming my layers warm light and cool light. And instead of making things lighter or darker, I'm either trying to warm them up or cool them off. So I'm thinking less about, yes, they do get darker as they turn away from the light, the way I illustrate them. But I'm also trying to shift, particularly just if I want something to be darker, instead of making it, I may make it a little bit darker value-wise, but what I try to do is shift it to a cooler color at the same time. So like the transition is less of a value shift and more of a temperature shift. Make sure I'm on the right layer. I get that paranoia, which I don't know if you guys get that in Photoshop. I think in any app that I'm doing, like as I'm going around, the same way that you remind yourself to hit save all the time, I always remind myself to just check in real quick and make sure that I'm not painting on the wrong layer, because, well, if you've been doing digital art for any length of time, you know what the feeling is of doing a lot of work and having it on the wrong layer. And for some people, it doesn't matter. If you're somebody who works with very few layers, or you just paint, you may have like one line art layer and then everything else is just, you're just painting like it's a traditional painting, you may not give a rat's ass. I'm a little OCD, and I tend to be very specific. Let me see here. You know what? I see what the problem is. I'm trying to paint these lights over. Oh, no, I see. I might have like a little layer that I'll put on top to kind of give it a little bit of a glow. But I've got like a light blue cast over the whole thing. Let's see here. Let me just warm up this heart a little bit more. Got another layer for gloss. It's just sort of like a wet. Is that, yeah. Scoot this over so you can see. It's just sort of like a little bit of like the wetness on the inside of the mouth, and that's just white. A little bit of tint. I think I may put a little bit of that, like I may paint on this layer and add a little bit of that to the heart as well. A little bit of that gloss there. At this point, it's just sort of like slowly moving pieces around. The big thing is going to be coloring the line art at the end. I may have to merge some layers because I see I've got like the teeth on one layer, the mouth on another. That may be what I have to do, is in order to color the line art, I may have to save a second version of this flattened and then just do the line art work. But I don't really like that idea because I kind of want to... I always like just the flexibility of manipulating the whole piece together, but at certain sizes, file sizes, Procreate limits the number of layers you can have, and I think that's the one bummer that I really find with this app. I'm used to being able to be layer manic and just lay out as many layers as I want. And go back to the queen's hair. See, even the hair, I added some more orange to it. Like, all of this hair is less vivid because of this blue layer, this blue cast that I have over the whole thing. But I can still go down to this warm area and just add a little bit of extra light on the hair here. You see, JK says thank you. Jimmy King says thank you always. From Jason at work. Enjoy your day, people. Thank you for dropping in. Have a good one. Go handle your business. Thanks so much. Let's see. All right. All right. You know what? That didn't really do much. To be honest, it's just going to be distracting. Let's leave that be. All right. I think this is one of those where I'm going to look at this piece years later and I'm going to see like 10 different things I could have done to improve it. But at the same time, I am currently getting to sort of the limits of my capacity. I guess one of those things where you look at a piece and you're like, I can see what I'm trying to do here, and I'm getting to, you know, the best version that I can create of it, but I can still tell that it's not 100% there. It's 100% of what I'm capable of doing, but I can see it being even better. You know, sometimes you get the reverse. Sometimes you finish a piece and you're like, well, I've done everything I can, and you just walk away from it, and then you come back later on and you're like, this isn't as horrible as I thought it was. Not that I think that this piece is horrible, but it's just the wanting it to be a little bit better. Like, you know what it is sometimes you surprise yourself with a piece and you're like, you're able to push it farther than you thought you could. Like when a piece comes out better than you expected. That's really the clear way of saying what I'm trying to express. And I think that this piece is coming out, I think, as expected. Meaning, I thought it would be a good piece. I feel like it's decently executed, but I don't feel like it broke new ground in terms of what I'm capable of. And there's that asking yourself, well, how do I break new ground? There's the question of, if I come back like a few months from now and I see places where I can improve it, do I open up the file and do a redo on it? Come back, give it another pass? Valid things, valid approaches. See here. You know, there's so much detail in this that I actually am starting to think that other than doing the clouds in the sky, I might do myself a disservice by adding more detail. It may simply be that this, yeah, it might just be too much. There's a lot going on in here. All right. Well, in that case, let's take a look at the sky here. Select the sky. And let's just lighten it up a little bit right around her head. Let's switch to the airbrush. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm just gonna put in a few more strokes in this. And as I have said, the current schedule is 1 week live stream, 1 week time lapse. So next week should be a time lapse video. And I should be done with this piece by then. Oh, I was going to mention, I am going to make one of the Alice in Wonderland pieces. I'm going to make it as a free mobile wallpaper for people on my newsletter. And as a Patreon reward, I'm going to make all of them available as free mobile wallpapers on Patreon. So that's an extra bonus for you guys if you're on there. When I get them done, it'll probably be in a few weeks because I'm also going to be... Oh, announcements. So the only comic convention I have on the books right now for this year is WonderCon Anaheim in April 10th through the 12th. I will be at Artist Alley D24. But I want to give you guys a heads up so that you can, if you're in the area and you want to come by, buy some artwork. I'm gonna have prints of the Alice in Wonderland series. I'll have copies of Morningstar, my first comic, Eye of the Gods, and other prints as well. So yeah, please stop by my table if you're gonna be there. For those who can't, as I mentioned, these will be one of them will be available as a downloadable mobile wallpaper for newsletter subscribers. So if you're not on the newsletter, get on the newsletter. There's a link in the description. If you're not on Patreon, you've been thinking about it, and you'd like to get all of these as mobile wallpapers, then that's how to do it. I'll be posting a link when they're all done in my Patreon. And also, by the way, I post content that isn't subscriber exclusive on Patreon as well. So it's kind of like a blog. So if you want to see some of the behind the scenes work that I create, it's worth going over to Patreon and following my account, even if you don't actually subscribe to contribute any money and subscribe to the campaign. You can just follow a creator on Patreon, the way you can follow somebody on Twitter or Instagram. So definitely head over there, check that out. And yeah, so let's wrap this up for today. And since I gave you the quick Patreon ramble, let me just show you real quick again. Patreon.com/GERIMI for those $2 a month. You get a bonus live stream, a ton of bonus behind the scenes content. The newsletter archive is at news.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, either Morningstar or my previous graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, I also have an art book that's available on there. Go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. So guys, thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate you guys hanging out, spending time, commenting in the chat. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. That's it for now. Go be creative.